In today's Farm Report, there will be a Dairy Expo in St. Cloud next week. Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office shares some highlights and extends this invitation.
I'd like to encourage everyone to at least consider coming to the Dairy Expo next week. That's on Wednesday, December 2nd and Thursday, December 3rd. If you haven't been there for a while, I think it's well worth your time to come. There's a lot of good education system. I think there really is a good trade show. I've really come to value trade show. Many of the people that are there are more than just there to sell you something. Obviously, that's how they make their living, but they're also there to educate of some of the new products that are coming. There's just amazing to me the number of new products that we're getting, especially from a technology area for the dairy industry and for all of agriculture for that matter. And I think it's just really nice to visit with other dairy producers, especially that Wednesday evening. There's a banquet and there's entertainment. I know it's a tough time if you've got to go home and milk cows, but even if you could come after that, I think it's always a really nice time to visit with other dairy producers or even during some of the sessions. A couple of exciting presenters I think we're going to have this year is one that I think is going to be the most interesting to hear too is we've got the dairy producer that was a part of the TV show Undercover Boss that was on maybe a couple of years ago where they went to a dairy farm, and he's going to talk a little bit about the challenge and the hesitation maybe that he had of allowing camera crew to come to his farm and a film on his farm. I think that would be a little bit scary, but I think he feels pretty good about how that turned out. We're going to have some things on transitioning the farm, such as discuss the undiscussables. I think that'll be a really good topic. It's a gal from Canada that's done a lot of consulting in that area. For people that are interested in production, we're going to have a panel on automatic calf feeders. We're going to have a lot of information on reproduction. Those are two good topics I think that we're going to have. And then Maren Bozek's going to talk about the dairy situation and outlook for next year. So I think it's always a good time if you get a chance to come, spend a day at the trade show. If you can come in the evening, that's good. But even just to come and visit with your neighbors and friends and learn a little bit about what they're thinking about as we move into 2016. This has been Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.
I think having those discussions and the ability to do that on a regular basis is very important. And I've watched that process, and it's been useful.
American Farm Bureau President Bob Stallman referring to the U.S.-China Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade, which wrapped up weekend meetings in Guangzhou, China. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, as part of the U.S. delegation, noted opportunity by both nations to reaffirm outcomes from last September's Strategic Agricultural Innovation Dialogue,
which was focused on regulatory systems and the need for China to create a science-based, rules-based, consistent regulatory system that's better coordinated and synchronized with our system and the system that is followed by other countries that are trading and raising genetically modified crops.
The Secretary, via a U.S. Commerce Department press release, said China's government indicated a quick move to review 11 ag biotechnology events currently pending approval. In addition, dialogue continued during JCCT on the access of U.S. beef into the Chinese marketplace. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Increased stocking density occurs when producers put more cattle into an area with less stalls. Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office talks about when it's beneficial to do this and what producers should look for.
One of the topics that comes up fairly often as I'm traveling around is stocking density on dairy farms. And it's fairly common for people that might not be familiar with what I'm talking about. It's fairly common for dairy farmers to put a few more cows in than there are stalls. And so the question is, at what point does that hurt my cows? Everybody's concerned about animal welfare and they want their cows to be happy, but at the same time buildings are expensive, and anyone that goes in barns and makes observations is there's not a cow laying in every stall at all times. They eat at different times of the day, so they get up and some will be eating at night and they might be getting a drink of water at night, and so what percent can we overstock? I think that's a really good question, and it's a little bit hard to exactly gauge what might be the number. I think it varies a little bit from barn to barn, but really the way I try to identify that is think about your subordinate cows. The more aggressive cows, they get resources, as in beds and feed space, whenever they really want. So those are the cows we really don't have to keep an eye on or try to evaluate. I think the important thing is to try to think about those less subordinate cows and when they maybe can have access, or the more subordinate cows, and when they can get access to their resources. The two biggest factors that drive a cow being subordinate or not, or where she kind of fits in the pecking area, is her body weight and her age. And so one of the things that can really help if you've got multiple pens, if you can kind of, number one, if you can sell those real boss cows that are really not very high producing cows, you maybe want to get rid of those. And then some other practical kind of tips that you can use is really try to separate out older cows from younger cows, because they're competing with cows that are a lot like them. And then I would also take those older cows that are real timid cows. You don't have to walk around and hang around cows and know some are real timid. You might want to put those with your younger cows. And then try to think about how you can manage groups of cows, for example, fresh cows and close-up cows, where they're maybe not feeling real well, and make sure those groups are not overcrowded at all. And I think if you can get by with that and just really observe those cows, do they have access to resources, or there's cows trying to get to the feed bunk that can't, or are there cows that want to lay down and can't, so they're wandering around your barn? If that's the situation, you're probably a little more overcrowded than you should be, and you'd probably be better off if you really did a little heavier culling. This has been Jim Salfer with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.
Coming up February 25th and 26th, the 2016 USDA Agricultural Outlook Forum in Arlington, Virginia. And World Agricultural Outlook Board Chair Seth Myers says among the initial details released about the event is the announced distinguished speaker, Howard G. Buffett. In addition,
the Secretary's invited Howard Buffett, and he's accepted for them to have a dialogue very similar to last year, where he had a really exciting dialogue with EU Commissioner Hogan.
This year's theme is Transforming Agriculture, with several concurrent sessions connected to the theme, including
changes in land tenure and transitions from producers to the next generation. So we'll have sessions on concepts like that.
Additional highlights include the traditional first day economic and trade outlooks and the forum's dinner speaker, Purdue University President and former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels. More information on the forum is available online at www.usda.gov/OCE/forum. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.